Hello, good evening and welcome to The Probe. I'm Carlos Caloni and we are live on DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 125. We're also live on Joy 99.7 FM and Love 99.5 FM. You can also catch us live streaming across all our digital platforms, Facebook, YouTube and X at Joy News on TV and globally on myjoyonline.com. Tonight, we are speaking to Ghana's largest opposition party. I'm talking about the NPP, which has just concluded a pivotal first step on its road to a potential 2028 comeback. Its national delegate conference, which was held in Accra just yesterday. With over 5,500 delegates in attendance, the party approved sweeping, constitutional amendment nearly 7 months after suffering its most crushing defeat in the 2024 general election. It's a first step toward rebuilding and repositioning itself for a possible comeback in the 2028 election. Now, some of the most significant amendments of the day included expanding the party's electoral area executive committees to 5 elected members and also increasing the polling station executives to 7. Now, the position of communication officer will now be elected at all levels rather than being appointed. Most notably, the Special Electoral College has been abolished, which is making it broadening the voter base for presidential primaries to include polling station executives, MPs, MMDCs, TESCON reps, former office holders, external branch delegates, and many others. However, delegates rejected 2 key proposals. One to redefine the youth age bracket and another to shift electoral oversight from the constituency level to the regional level. The big question tonight is, will these amendments truly shift the tide within the NPP, or are they just cosmetic? Also, who stands to benefit? And can these internal changes alone sway voter decisions in 2028? But even before we get answers, the aftermath of the conference has stirred controversy within the party, with key members of Kennedy Agyapong's campaign team accusing party leadership of creating quote-unquote engineered optics to favor former Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. How damaging are these concerns to the party's rebuilding strategy, especially at a time when unity and full participation are crucial for a 2028 comeback? When I return, the party's Deputy General Secretary Alhaji Haruna Mohammed will be speaking to us here. Stay with us. Well, welcome back and thank you for staying with us here on The Probe. You're welcome to the show, Haruna Mohammed. How was yesterday, though?
Thank you very much. Yesterday was very fantastic. I think that this is one of the best conferences that has happened to the NPP, the Alphan family. I was here a day before the conference. That was Friday from 3 p.m. We discussed, and there was that question of whether we'll come out very peacefully. And I can say and knock my chest and stand out and say that kudos to the NPP leadership, kudos to the delegates and the invited guests, and kudos to the planning committee, to which I was the secretary for organizing this particular conference on behalf of the National Party. Indeed, the NPP has shown to the world and shown to other political parties that we are indeed the beacon of democracy in Africa.
We were made to believe that you were expecting about 5,500 delegates. Are you sure you had a 5,500 delegates?
Yes, we did a roll call, and in the roll call, all the regions that were to be represented were represented. All the materials that were to go to the delegates were sent to the delegates. And except in very few cases, those who were reported to be sick were not able to make up to the conference. But largely, we had over 99% of the delegates attending the conference.
Right. We know that you had a number of motions that were up for amendment. How many were they, and how many have been, actually rejected? For my knowledge, 2 have been rejected so far, right?
Yes, two. We had 56 motions and 2 were rejected.
Okay, let's look at the disciplinary reforms. You've made some changes there. And there you said, you know, the executive can recommend suspension. That is motion 2. And that constitute can now appeal constituency regional officers at a higher level, which means if there's any disciplinary issue at the grassroots level, instead of probably taking it to national, they can go to the next level. Is that the understanding?
This motion was supported by the facts on which, or the basis on which this should be amended. And if you permit me, the amendment is necessary to ensure justified suspensions of party executives elected and appointed by executive committee only upon recommendation by the disciplinary committee.
Okay.
Pending disciplinary proceedings against such officer. It is the disciplinary committee that shall recommend suspension having regard to its preliminary findings. One will ask, what was the opposition? What is the status quo now or before? Because the constitutional amendment process takes effect immediately. So it means that in any pronouncement to our party constitution, you need to go along with the constitution now and this amendment.
Okay.
What was the status quo? It is Article 3.7, suspension of a member. Member may be suspended from the membership of a party or holding any office in the party pending an inquiry into his or her conduct by a disciplinary committee. So that it means that you can't be suspended before you appear before a disciplinary committee.
Okay.
But in this particular circumstance, the suspension is ceded to the disciplinary committee.
They now will make the decision whether you should be suspended or not. But previously, you would have been suspended.
Yes, the body can suspend you. For example, National Council or National Executive Committee can suspend you and refer you to the disciplinary committee. In these circumstances, that the suspension should be ceded to the body, that is the disciplinary committee, to do the suspension if the need be, whilst investigations continue. And I think that this is fair.
So you think this will address what specifically?
What this seeks to address is that arbitral suspensions, people taking their individual decisions without recourse to the procedure, is something that is going to be scrapped. That will be non-existent in this particular circumstances.
Okay, and also the grassroots structure, amendment, where we are looking at a polling station executive number being increased to 7. What is the current situation and what is informing this particular increase?
The committee, Michael Quay's committee, recommended that we should have, we should move to a stage where we have what we call one man, one vote. However, because of the exercise that will come into play before we can get to one man, one vote, we need to get the data, accurate data, that all party members will be able to appreciate and get to understand that this is something that we can work with. Until then, we should have a limited expansion. In that limited expansion, we rather look at increasing the number of polling stations from 5 to 7. Mathematically, that's about 40% increment.
Okay.
So it represents that limited expansion. That is why we did not stop there. We went ahead to also increase, or yes, because it was 1 in terms of the electoral area.
Right.
So it has been increased from 1 to 4 to 5. That means that we are adding 4 more to the existing number.
Yeah.
And again, you also look at adding former executives, also adding former MMDCs and former ministers and deputy ministers. And we are not just adding, if you are a former minister or if you are a former MMDC or if you are a former executive. But you must, the caveat is that card-bearing members. You can be a former MMDC, you can be a former executive or a former MP, and you are no more a card-bearing member of the party.
How can that happen?
We have seen recently some other constituencies that a former MP in our party decided to join the NDC. So he's a former, or she was a former MP, all right, but she has lost that right of this current status quo to be part of the data. There are other people who were holding executive positions. For example, if you check the former Greater Accra Regional Chairman of the NDC, may he so rest in peace, Adekoka was an executive in our party. So if you don't put that caveat, definitely it doesn't give meaning, and people will jump in if there is no closing clauses to that. So you must be still a card-bearing member of the party to qualify to enjoy that particular addition.
So any former executive or appointee who maybe might have gone through disciplinary action, could they also qualify for this particular?
Once the disciplinary actions are taken, exhausted, and there is a decision, if the decision is made on you, definitely you become, the decision will determine whether you will qualify for this particular provision. For example, if the decision is that you have been removed from the party, it means that the decision holds that first your position was taken away, so it becomes non-existent. Then the other decision is that you have ceased to be a member of the party. Once you cease to be a member of the party, you are not a card-bearing member, even though you were a former executive.
So it depends on the situation surrounding your suspension.
Your suspension. If you are suspended as a member of the party, you are not a card-bearing member.
Someone like Paul Afoko, your former national chairman, for instance, will he be part of this group?
He was suspended from being the national chairman, but he was not suspended from being member of the party.
So which means?
It means that he's a member of the party, and he's a former national chairman.
So which means he can take decision per this new amendment?
Because he's a former national chairman of the party.
Okay. Now, let's also look at the expansion, the abolishment of the electoral college, which you used to have.
Yes.
But per this new amendment, that has been scrapped.
Yes.
What is the reasoning that actually went into that decision?
If you can point to the appropriate motion, so that at least the justifications are part of it, which gives the reason, then I can also make reference to the specific constitutional provision that has given right to that.
That should be, you have a lot of motions without...
Yes, a lot of them.
But the concern really is about, you've scrapped the electoral college. I remember that was introduced some few years back.
Yes.
And now you are scrapping it. So
yes, that's motion 47.
Right.
And this is reference to Article 1319. Article 1319 talks about where there are more than 5 contestants for nomination as the party's presidential candidate, a special electoral college shall cast their vote by secret ballot for the first 5 contestants to be shortlisted. What is the justification for this to be scrapped? The special electoral college system, which was introduced in the 2009 constitutional amendment to shortlist aspiring presidential candidates, has outlived its usefulness. Why did it outlive its usefulness? You look at the processes that we do relative to the conduct and electing our flag bearer. You see that the 2 elections become so cumbersome. And again, the process, the reasoning behind why we want to shift and have the presidential primaries very early is to avoid the elections that we go, the many elections. Because the reason is that we have always, after an election period, you'll be running an election for 2-3 years, which is something that is very worrying. And again, we don't need that particular process of selecting certain few, where even tie comes. Because when we went for the last time, there was that issue that we have to, which the Constitution did not make much provisions for. So if they are 10, 20, let's allow them. Let's go into the elections and get whoever wins the elections, then we move ahead. So because it all leads to one, to get a flag bearer.
Okay.
So why the division? At that particular material moment, it was fit for purpose. But this time, it has outlived its usefulness. That's why the current managers of the party and per proposals from party members, as situated in Article 19 of the party constitution, decided to do away with that particular provision.
Okay. And so how were these amendments actually received by your own delegates yesterday?
I think this was received very well by them. Before the delegates conference, by 8 p.m., because the distribution of this particular amendment was basically within the premise of my committee, okay, which was the secretariat. So by 8 p.m., I made sure that all regional secretaries were asked to come and pick this document. And this was disseminated to all the regions. And all the delegates had it by, let's say, latest by 10, because by 1 a.m., I was going around all the accommodation places. And I saw that they were reading and discussing and debating on matters that they have to deal with on the floor of conference. So they had it before, and they were very happy. That is why if you use the mood barometer to test the people whilst they were in the conference premises, they were very, very, very much aware of what we were doing. They were very happy that none of this particular amendment brought any controversy. These were amendments that people think that, yes, truly, truly, it is something that the NPP need in moving forward.
What would you want to say to those who believe that these amendments are tailored towards, aiding a particular person in the party, not the party interest itself?
Well, I have not heard, basically, somebody saying that this amendment was tailored towards one particular candidate. And also reading through the amendment, I don't see any portion of the amendment. For example, if you say amend Article 1 of the party constitution to include the party motto, symbol, and color, does it add vote to any candidate? No. 2, the motion 2 you mentioned, you amend Article 3.7 of the Constitution to give the power to recommend suspension of a member or an office holder pending disciplinary action. So if you say that a disciplinary committee should have the power to suspend somebody before the person is taken through, because you don't want the managers who are executives to do so before handing them over to you. How do you extend the courtesies to somebody? How does it benefit somebody? How does it benefit somebody, one candidate or any hopeful, that you are scrapping the special
electoral college?
How does it benefit anybody? I don't think that there is any single provision or motion in this particular amendment or motions that were presented that is inuring to the benefit of one single individual.
How much of Professor Michael Quay's recommendations have been captured in these amendments?
Yes, Professor Michael Quay's recommendations were captured in these motions because we gave Professor Michael Quay's committee 2 activities to do. One was to look at the reasons why we lost the elections. The other was to look at possible amendment of the party's constitution and possible restructuring. So in the process of that, the report came. Summary of the report was presented. Then those recommendations of amendment were made clear to the party at National Council. So National Council, in seeking to do so constitutionally, directed the General Secretary to start the process of amendment. And when it comes to the processes of amendment, you go to Article 19 of the party's constitution. So General Secretary, under the directive of the National Council, complied with Article 19A, which I read, notice of such amendment has been submitted in writing to the General Secretary not later than 2 months before the National Annual Delegates Conference. So in National Council giving the directive, they indicated that the General Secretary should be minded that in 2021, there were processes in the amendment of the party's constitution, which was inconclusive in Kumasi. So the National Annual Delegates Conference in Kumasi referred the matter to the National Council to conclude on some of the areas that were not concluded. And this particular committee was chaired by Osahini, the minority leader. Honorable Afenyo Maki. And these reports were submitted. So National Council then submitted those particular proposals by way of motions to the new committee that was set, headed by Frank Davis. And this committee added it to the proposals that were sent by party faithfuls. On the instructions and directive of National Council, the General Secretary issued an internal memo on the 25th of April to the members of the party to submit proposals. And these proposals were submitted, which was circulated by a release on the 18th of June per the instructions of Article 19B. So it was circulated, and this constituted about 300 amendment proposals that were submitted. So these amendment proposals, the 300 amendment proposals, were consolidated to give us the 56 motions.
Okay.
We don't present amendment proposals before conference. We present motions before conference. And that is why all the 300 were consolidated, and then we had 56 motions. And 54
so this passed. Also captured part of the Professor Michael Quay's recommendation.
Yes, they were all consolidated.
Okay.
They were all consolidated.
Okay. So I'm interested in what impact this particular decision amendment you've taken as a party.
Yes.
You seek, you're looking forward for it to have on your journey to the 2028 general elections. Many believe that this will really not, shift voter decision or perceptions about the NPP.
I think that if you read carefully the 56 motions that were sought to be amended, which was approved, you would see that there were very critical ones amongst them. And I will raise one of them for you. Under Motion 26, it was a new provision. Amend Article 10 of the Constitution by inserting a new provision to include the consideration of position papers from sector committees of the party on key development since the last National Delegates Conference at the National Delegates Conference. So it means that in the previous Constitution, we had what we call the sector committees. And the sector committees were the committees of National Council that we dealt with the various sectors within the economy. That is, if you look at health, you look at education, you look at environment, you look at technology, you look at so many sectors have been carved. And that is why in Parliament, we have various sector committees, and those sector committee heads, by virtue of the party's constitution, drives them in. So we are now saying that these sector committees should be allowed to present position papers. What would these position papers do? If an economy subcommittee is presenting a position paper, it will seek to analyze what is happening now vis-a-vis what happened in the past, and to identify the loopholes and the gaps to ensure that we proffer solutions, not just to attack. So there are a lot of things that this is also sought to do. In this same particular amendment motions, there was that provision also to ensure that we should also add under the National Executive Committee to include both members of Parliament and non-members of Parliament as well as their functions. That means that instead of allowing only the member of Parliament who is the chairperson or the ranking member when you are in government and when you are in opposition, then we should also add expert areas who are not members of Parliament. So, for example, Reverend Ntim Fojo is the chairperson or the ranking member on Defense and Interior.
Right.
So by virtue of that, he's a member of National Council because of the sector committees. So in that instant, we cannot have other members to be part because it is so parliamentary. So we want to also extend that. We should have non-parliamentarians roped in, which are expert area members to be part of that particular subcommittee. What would it add? Reverend Ntim Fojo, if he doesn't have security background, he has the opportunity to have a wide range of experts who will be advising him on matters, and it will enrich his contribution on the floor of Parliament. So there are many reasons that that they thought through, because these are people in academia, people who are very young people from TESCOM and all, they thought through some of these things, and this is the impact it's going to have. So if we are able...
Yes, so the impact is the main thing.
Yeah,
you've made these amendments and
yes.
all that. You've done all the work. What is the end game for this particular amendment? What do you hope to achieve?
The end game is
or what has changed?
What will change? Because, for example, we talk about the suspension. If right procedures are used in suspensions, people will feel satisfied and think that they have been treated fairly. You get the point?
Right.
If you check the results in the 2024 elections, you could see that with the votes that NDC got, is just a little over just 100,000 from what they got in 2020. The votes that we got went down by 2.7. Why? Could it be that it is our members that have stayed out without going to vote? Could it be that people feel that they were not satisfied? Could it be that people were unjustly suspended? Could it be that somebody unilaterally took a decision without due process? So if that could be the case, then when people are given fair hearing for the rules of natural justice to work, people will feel satisfied even if it affects them. So it gives them the room to continue to work on and make sure that the party remains in power. So it gives the people the right that, no, whatever be the situation, I would not be treated unjustly. I'll be treated well. So many other provisions are in there. The expansion of the colleges. It will also give, if you have one person working for an electoral area, it's just like when you are in a productive setting in terms of line management. You are there as a one person. You are able to have a productivity level of, let's say, 5 tons a day.
Right.
Then you have been added, they have added 4 more workforce to you. And if it's going to be true that one person can produce 5 tons a day, it means that we will be having 20 tons a day, because productivity will go. So in terms of organization, the reach of one person in an electoral area would definitely not be the same as the reach of 5 people in an electoral area. So if you have, let's say, 24 households that the electoral area coordinator can visit, then 4 people will be able to do it with less time than one person. So it has a lot of...
Which means when it comes to campaigning, for instance, for the 2028 election, for instance, you have more people on the ground working for the party.
Yes, because the elections are won at the polling station. And we discovered that because we went to the Supreme Court with the 2012 election petition. And the ruling was made in 2013. And it is justified that elections are won at the polling station. So when we went and sat back with the 5 men, we were able to work through and got the largest of votes and a sitting president, which a record that nobody has broken yet. But the margin of votes that we got has been broken in 2024. So we still have one record that has not been broken because we're able to unseat for the first time.
Right.
A sitting president was unseated with 5 members. We realized that going forward, fast forward, we should have more people working at the electoral area. Why did we do, or what did we see that? We saw that what happened in 2024, the NDC had gone to the polling stations, decided to violate the law on vigilantism, and went ahead to do what they did. And when they did that, we had to resort to the law court, and we became dissatisfied, even when the law was pronounced and the procedures were not used properly, and the Electoral Commission had to go in for an illegal election we don't believe in. So we have more men.
So increasing the numbers is a way of beefing up your people on the ground to counter the vigilantism?
No, to be able to mobilize more of the people. So the presence of the people will also let the people know that, no, the people are around. Again, on voting day, the electoral area and the polling station executives are supposed to go and be moving the people out to vote. So once they have to go, 5 people going out to move and 7 people going out to move will certainly also not produce the same results.
Okay.
So time will also be down, because if you use 1 hour to get 100 people, 7 people may use, let's say, 45 minutes or 40 minutes to get them in. And I believe that is going to be a very good incentive.
So you believe that per these amendments, the NPP will be able to come back strongly in 2028 to win the election, presidential election?
Is it Carlos? It's not only the amendment that is going to bring us. One, the amendment is seeking in many instances, one, to strengthen the party, two, to proffer policy direction in terms of the additions that has to do with these subcommittees. Then there are other amendments which are new that is also going to add to certain happenings that had outlived its usefulness. So in that particular direction, the party will be focused, the party will be disciplined, then we'll be able to point out the excesses and the settings in this government to show to the good people of Ghana. And like I always say it, for example, Ghanaians were so worried because they painted us in such a manner that we are having many ministers, plenty ministers, and they are all feeding onto the consolidated fund. We spend so much to take care of them. And Ghanaians believed it. Ghanaians believed it. Today, we all know that even though they said they want to have 60 ministers, which he has had now, even though they said they don't want to have excessive spending, everybody looked at them and said yes. Today, 9-month budget for Office of Government Machinery is 2.7 billion. 12-month budget for Office of Government Machinery under His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo was 326 million.
Well, these are not figures we have readily to verify.
No, it is verified for me. Yes. For this fact, I can tell you appendix.
So the point you're making is that with these amendments, your men will be able to really put out the negatives of this government more effectively. You'll be able to communicate more effectively to, influence voter decision going forward.
We can. We will be able. And
all right.
Also, the party machinery is being
more efficient.
Yes, we're more efficient.
Okay. The one concern emerged about how the conference was actually organized and how other interest groups within the party were handled. And so I'm bringing in Kwesi Kwatin. He speaks for the Kennedy Japan team. If you're on the line, you have issued a statement and you said that the organizers of the conference have quote and unquote painted, let me get the actual word you use, staged, where is it? I'm not finding it. But what really is your concern about the way the conference was organized?
Thank you very much, and good evening to you, and good evening to my deputy hardworking general secretary. I must commend the team. They've done a yeoman's job in terms of the organization, in terms of the security. So far, so good. We're all there to help, of course, particularly within the areas that we are also good at, and in my case, specifically communication. In terms of even the general outlook of the event, I must say that it went so well, very good branding, and we must all take credit for that. But of course, I mean, in as much as a party, we organize this to strengthen the party as a whole. I think it's also important that we take some good feedback so that in other organizations, it can also help us to improve.
Right.
I think my concern was not necessarily a concern for myself, but I mean, bottom line is that platforms like this and events like this are very necessary to forge unity among party members, especially with key party stakeholders. And so if you had also maybe listened to the grounds, particularly amongst most of the delegates, the conversation was also as though some way, somehow, some hopefuls, and I use hopefuls because as of now, we don't even have aspirants yet, so not to even have candidates yet, were more or less giving an upper step or an added advantage to project themselves I mean, it is undisputed fact that, for instance, if you look at, say, Dr. Baumia, he was a former vice president, and I mean, accordingly, you would accord him with such courtesies, privileges, and respect. But when concerns are that many people also have it, or they believe that, I mean, it was overdone in terms of having him to move around the whole stadium to wave at people and to create some sense of massive endorsement from the whole delegates. People felt that it could have been toned down, especially within the circumstances that we find ourselves. Because, I mean, you need unity, you need everybody on board. You are talking about strengthening the party. And so I'm also of the view, like, I mean, the many like-minded concerns that has been raised, that at instances like this, I'm sure we can tone down with some of these promotions. I mean, generally, it could be that it was from a very clear motive from the organizers, because, I mean, what is so wrong if our former vice president and our former flag bearer is going around waving his delegates? But I mean, you are in a party where
but he is the former vice president of the country and also a key member of your party. What really is wrong with him going around and, you know, exchanging pleasantries with party delegates?
We must also be mindful of where we find ourselves and what can also break us. In the spirit of party revival, party unity, especially where, if you are being very honest to the political realities that we are confronted with, we know that there are other people who may also have similar interests in also vying for the position that I'm sure, God willing, when an opportunity is open, the former vice president also contest for. I am not disputing the fact that he should not be given such or accorded such courtesies and privileges. But the point that I raise is that if other people, other delegates are having concerns that it was overdone to the extent that it's almost taking away the beauty of everything that we did, it is a more reason why I felt that, well, I mean, in going forward, as part of the feedbacks improving, we should also consider the balancing act so that other people do not necessarily feel that we are giving an undue advantage to somebody. I mean, he went to speak, very fantastic speech. And I mean, I felt it should have ended there. But to go around and amid the suspicions that, oh, he has the endorsement of A, B, C people, it may not necessarily be so, but it fuels some level of speculations which may not augur well for the strength and the unity that we are all preaching for. But I mean, aside that, I agree everything was good, it was solid.
Were you expecting Kennedy Japan to also have been given the opportunity to speak?
I mean, those decisions doesn't rest on me. I mean, this is on TV. I will not communicate. Even if, I mean, there was such communication that some of these aspirants will be given opportunity, time may not have allowed it. And such decisions goes beyond my pay scale. Obviously, the organizers will make such a decision. But ultimately, the lessons that we have to draw from these feedbacks, which I think we should not be dismissive about them, is that on platforms like this, we must not create an environment that suggests and fuels certain speculations.
Right.
It may not be intentional. It may not necessarily be intentional. But the whole point is that if you hear delegates raising such concerns, remember the delegates that came, they do not all necessarily support one person, one aspirant. Some are with Ken, some are with Dr. Baumia, some are with Dr. Brian, some are with Dr. Duchum, some are with Engineer Kwabena Japo and all that. I mean, even the other positions.
They were all raising concerns about this particular issue, right?
I mean, that was the feedback that I mean, some of us had from some of these delegates, that yes, very beautiful presentation by the former vice president, but in terms of how the prolongedness of it smacks some intentional promotion, which, I mean, it may not necessarily.
Is that what you call engineered optics?
That's what I'm saying, that yes, when people raise such concerns that I mean, because you see, it may not necessarily also be unfounded. Recall the last 2024 general elections, for instance, we did all the branding, gave good outlook. At the end of the day, they don't reflect in the votes that we wanted. So realistically, and at moments like this, at the platform where we are preaching for peace, we are preaching for unity, we are preaching for strengthening of the party, we should avoid giving people basis to think that platforms like that are structured to promote one candidate. It doesn't augur well for anybody.
Okay, we are fortunate. We have your Deputy General Secretary here to respond to this. Was it really orchestrated to benefit a particular candidate, in this case, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia?
Thank you very much. I would say good evening to Kwesi Kwarteng. He's a fantastic communicator. He has represented the party in many occasions, and I can say that he's a very fine gentleman. Kwesi, good evening to you.
Good evening, my brother.
I understand the concern that he's raising, and certainly I will not be dismissive of the concern that you have put through. But I can answer that this was not orchestrated, or it was something that was planned. I am a member of the planning committee, secretary to the committee. Indeed, when the former vice president went onto the floor, and if you look at the structure, there are constitutional speeches that are to be made, and also there are other speeches that comes by convention. And he being a former vice president, we have the two former presidents whose speeches would have preceded his speech. And fortunately, one of them could not have the speech, then the other had it. So he being the only person present there, when he entered, he offered to greet. Greeting is a courtesy, and that particular courtesy, you can't stop somebody from greeting. And I can understand that he indicated that when the nominations are open, he will contest. There are other people who also have the mind to contest. But one of the key things that we should all know is that, yes, in every competition, people will feel in one way or the other that somebody is given an advantage. But in these particular circumstances, it is clear that we don't have any contest at all. There is no contest. We have not opened nominations. People can inspire to aspire. People will have the hope of getting the opportunity to lead at a point in time. But we must all at time differentiate times of elections, because when we open nominations for such instances, we would definitely give some rules and regulations. Assuming it was an election conference, assuming it was that we had already opened nominations and were doing this exercise, all the advices that my good brother has presented would have been factored in, because others were legitimately also in that particular shoe or lacing their boot in terms of qualification into a process. So we would have been minded not to allow certain things to happen. When this was offered as a greeting, then the planning committee said that it's a courtesy. Our culture allows greetings. So we should not tamper with the core values, more especially when we said that we're rebuilding the party on our core values, right? So if you are rebuilding on the core values, and one of the core values of our party is respect for hierarchy, respect for tradition, respect for religion, and also competition. So in the era of competition, which is not yet competitive enough because there is no competition at the moment, and we take his advice into consideration.
So you gave Dr. Bawumia the platform because of the fact that he's been a former vice president?
Yeah, he's a former vice president. But he going around was to greet. Greeting is a courtesy.
So why couldn't you extend the same courtesies to people like Dr. Kennedy Japan, for instance?
We wish one day they become president, vice president, and they would be extended those courtesies.
But he supported this particular conference. He donated money.
And that is why we commended him. The General Secretary commended him. And I will use the opportunity here to commend him, because without their contribution, the conference wouldn't have come on. But what happens is that conference always give opportunity to former presidents and former vice presidents. And I wish one day nobody's turn will be there in perpetuity. There will always definitely be a time. I'm a deputy general secretary today. 3 years ago, it was a very fine lawyer, okay? 5, 8 years ago, it was somebody. Tomorrow, 2 years, 3 years, I may not be a deputy.
You may become the general secretary of the NPP.
Somebody will be there. So that is how it is. So my brother, I've taken your advice.
Right.
But I know that myself and you is not a debate. It's just that I'm making clarifications to those matters. We did not give him the opportunity to go around to greet, but he requested to greet because it's a courtesy.
All right. Kwesi Kwarteng, I think that should suffice, right?
Oh, I mean, certainly, there is no grounds for this. And I'm happy how Prof has addressed this concern. I mean, it's not a Kwesi Kwarteng concern. Like I indicated, if we are being very mindful to the relatives of members of our party and the delegates around, certainly they are not necessarily loyal to just one person in terms of whether people are aspirants, whether people are being hopeful. I mean, we cannot be dismissive about the fact that there were hopefuls there who some way or the other publicly have declared their interest to contest.
Right.
At the end of the day, bottom line is that it becomes a learning curve for the development of our party, so that indeed the unity that we are preaching for, the strengthening of the party, the peace that we are all craving for, we can be able to build a stronger party, a formidable party with everybody involved, and then we all move ahead so that 2028 will be a win for the party. For me, that is more critical.
Thank you. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Before we wrap up, now, what's next for the party from here?
What is next from here is that we have passed those resolutions. We have put together sunset clauses. The constitution that we have amended takes effect immediately. However, the National Council, per the powers vested in them, set up a 31st January elections for the flag bearer. Many people were asking, as it has been said, what delegates are we going to use for the elections? If you check my conversations, I had always referred back to the Constitution at the time, that once the National Council has so directed and fixed the date per Article 13(1) of the party's Constitution, then when the time is due and there is no amendment, means that the valid delegate at that time will be the delegates for that election.
Okay.
Because their tenure of office hasn't expired. Okay. But in these current circumstances, starting from today, it means that the sunset clause here is that all those additions that have been made, and it requires an election for them to become members or delegates to the conference, their tenure of office will be together with the new when these current ones time of office expire. So it means that before we can add them to, then these current executives or delegates in the polling station and the electoral area, because these are the areas that we have amended that will have election,
right,
including the communications officers, will have to wait until their tenure of office is ended. Then we add that to it. So it means that it will begin from 1st of February, 2026.
So they cannot vote?
They cannot. But those that have been added, who can easily be identified, former MP, who is a card-bearing member, is easy. It doesn't require election. Former MMDC, the identification is easy. It doesn't require elections. Former executives, it doesn't require. So all those ones will be populated and added to the current album for the next election. So the next election, which is 31st January, will have a limited expansion that will include such persons.
Do we, as of now, know the number that you'll be adding to the register? Because sometimes the register becomes an issue in terms of those you'll be adding who will not go through the election.
We have to go back, let our party officers in every constituency to identify based on the categorization by the new amendment. And they will give us that data. The party's IT department will populate and develop the additional album or add on to the current one per the instructions of this party's constitution. You know, this particular motion was also moved and adopted by the National Annual Delegates Conference. And when that is done, we will then use that particular...
When should that be done? Because...
I think that immediately, you know, this book will have to be rewritten to include those particular portions. Again, the party hierarchy, in concluding on this matter, will come out with a schedule as to how this is going to be done to conclude all the additions and to be battle ready for the 31st January primaries that is going to come on. Again, what people also had to know is that the MMDCs who have been added, the former executives who have been added, all those persons will only have casting votes for presidential and parliamentary, but not for executive position.
Why that?
Why? Because
because delegates are supposed to have all those, right?
There is always a restriction or an endpoint to every power, right? So there is that particular discussion that if you check the MMDCs, they are appointed at the prerogative of the sitting president. Okay? So if I'm a president and I want to take over the party and they are going to participate in the election of party executives, I can appoint 5 or 6 MMDCs for a place and fire them. I can have as many as. So in the period that I would have, I'll be able to accumulate a lot of the executives that I'll be able to change,
to influence
and then get the people elected so that I can control. So they are at the preserve of the president, not the party. The president has the power to. So by way of that particular position, we should allow them because they are coming to serve in government. Parliamentarians has a role in government. The president, the one that is going to be the flag bearer, has the role in government. So they should be part in taking the decision on the presidential and also on the parliamentary. But in the running of the party, we should give that limitation to allow who are holding party positions to take decision on it.
All right.
So if I were to be a former MMDC and I have been a party chairman before, I would not list my name as a former MMDC. I will list my name as a former party. Okay,
let's briefly talk about the Akwetia MP. Some of our viewers are raising concerns that you did not even give him a minute's silence in his memory, in Eskumi.
It was done.
It was really done?
Yes, it was done.
Okay, all right.
He was even issued an accreditation.
Okay, so
then also his car pass and everything.
Okay.
So the leadership of Parliament, I personally went to Parliament House and submitted to the leadership of Parliament through Honorable Jerry Ahmed Shaibu.
Okay. You said the changes take effect immediately.
Yes, but that does not require election. Takes effect immediately.
But the chairman of the committee said that all the new changes take effect after the presidential primaries in 2026.
No, those that has no elections takes effect. Those that, because if it takes, we have to get those who...
So those that take effect now are the MP,
yes, the former
appointees.
Yes.
But those that will have to be elected,
yes,
they will take effect,
yes,
after the February 2020.
Yes.
But he said 2026.
But that's
okay. Sure, that's right.
So
okay.
It happens in 2026.
All right. So when are you opening the nomination? For the flag bearership.
Now that we are concluded with this, leadership will do so. The only body that seizes the power to have discussions on presidential primaries is the National Council. Okay. So I believe that there will be either a conveyance of a national council or the general secretary in looking at the constitution and the timelines involved in the conduct of presidential primaries will issue a notice of opening of nomination to be in tandem with the parties.
But you don't know when that will be done?
Unless I revert my mind back to the constitution.
Okay.
If I do so, because there is timeline between the date of elections and the opening of nomination. So even if it is that tomorrow, the nomination should be open,
okay,
the General Secretary will issue a statement.
The NDC say you are learning their resetting strategy to reset your party. Is that right?
I don't know the reset they're talking about, because we have always said that their reset is a downgrade and a settings government. And I've told you, and maybe you are not believing it, if you go and check Appendix 4A, the MMDA's expenditure account, both in 2024 and 2025, if you check the Office of Government Machinery, Akufo-Addo was spending 326,907,084 pesos. Under goods and services, it was 924,143,874. And the capex was 612,440,588.
Okay.
Put together, you get 1.8. But then, if you put only Office of Government Machinery, was 2.7 for 9 months.
Okay.
9 months. So if you put all their capex and goods and services, you get 3.8.
Okay. I think we can go into that data later on.
So,
but my final question to you, do you believe that these amendments actually bring you back to power in 2020?
The amendment is one of the avenues to strengthen the base, refocus the direction, get the machinery in place, and focus on what is happening now, and to add to the policies that we are going to present when we have a flag bearer and what we are going to sell to the people of Ghana. That will bring us.
Who is in charge of the party now?
The national chairman has always been part of the party.
Thank you so much.
Been in charge of the party, but it was affirmed authoritatively in the party's constitution now to say that the national chairman is the leader of the party, both in opposition and in government.
Thank you so much for speaking to us here.
Thank you very much.
On The Probe. And this has been The Probe. We have a lot of stories on this particular conversation on our social media platforms, and you can equally go to myjoyonline.com to read a lot more. My name is Carlos Kalodi. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good evening.